Ready to start the meeting. We're doing it in person and on Zoom. So we kind of have, that's what this contraption here is. So it serves a purpose. What I'm going to do is a brief presentation, and then we're going to open for question and answers later. I'm going to talk about the whole Nani project, and then just some other projects we're looking at, and some ideas on real estate and our market and how I'm planning to come up with something a little different, just so you understand what I'm doing. The first thing is who I am. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Peter Savio, local boy, born Hilo, raised in Honolulu, St. Louis High School grad. Been in real estate pretty much all of my life. Bought my first property when I was 15 years old with money I saved. By the time I was 20, I owned interest in 2-3 units. There's 5 children in my family. All of us bought real estate as teenagers. All of us bought with money that we owned. As soon as my oldest sibling was able to hold a job, they became the borrower and we became the partners. And today we all still live here. We all own our homes. None of us had to leave to the mainland. And the ownership of real estate really makes it easier to live in Hawaii and thrive in Hawaii. And that's always been a little bit of my passion. I've been in the business since I was 15, so it's like 60 years. I'm also an outstanding alumni for the University of Hawaii. I was one of their first class of outstanding alumni. I'm still not sure why they picked me, because I was there with some very prominent people, Senator Inouye and all of these very successful guys and me. And they said they did it because they were looking for someone who was younger and socially conscious. And I guess because of my affordable housing, it kind of, my program stumps people. It really does. They don't understand it. They all kind of think there's a gimmick or a trick to it. And it's all about helping people buy. So let's get started with Ho'onani. That's a project I'm doing here on Maui. And again, we started about almost a year and a half ago, and needless to say, got delayed and delayed. Well, the good news is we got a letter from the county, and I love their title for this letter because I had to think about what they said, but it says preliminary compliance report for the special management use permit for Ho'onani subdivision. And I thought, okay, what does that mean? It means we're ready and able to apply for our building permits. So we're hoping within 90 to 180 days, we will receive our building permit. And of course, we'll be able to start construction and our program to providing affordable housing. If this is correct, we will be back on Maui probably in 3 to 4 months to hold the drawing and choose the 54 or the 81 people who will have a chance to buy a unit. I think we had over 2,500 people interested. We had 500 pre-qualified. I'm sure a number of the people may have purchased or moved away. So we're not sure how many we still have in that loan approved group, but at least a percentage or a number of them should be able to buy. Now I want to talk a little about Ho'onani because you've already heard me say 54 units or 81 units. And that's because we aren't sure how many units we're going to end up with. When the project started, it was a 27 unit subdivision. And it came with one auxiliary unit or, ohana type unit in Honolulu, what we call it, where you're able to build a second unit. During the process of getting this project approved, this project, the original gentleman started, I think, 10, 12 years ago. But during that period, the law changed and you're now allowed 2 auxiliary units. And we believe the way the law is written, we are in fact approved for 81. So now that we can go for the permit, we'll try to clarify that with the county. So we may only have 51, which is what the original approval said, because the law said you could only have 51. Or if we have 81, which would give us the ability to sell 81 units. Now, for most developers, the difference between 54 and 81 is an increase in profit. For me, it represents a reduction in price because I'm a cost plus developer. So if I take my total cost and split it over 54 units, it's going to cost that much. If I take my cost and spread it over 81 units, my costs go down. So having that extra 27 units could mean $100,000, $150,000 price reduction for some of the buyers. In fact, for all the buyers, okay? So for me, it's an important thing to get. And we may need your help in terms of encouraging the county to allow it. Again, people think you give that kind of density, all that happens is the developer makes money, and that's true in most cases. In my case, that's not the situation. Because again, we're gonna take any savings reduces our price. Any concession reduces our price. The cost of wood goes down, lumber reduces our price. My profit is a set number once we get the program structured, and I'll never get more than that. I'll get less, because if there's cost overruns, it comes out of my share. So if I misjudge something, it hits me before I have to raise prices. So my profit is really our contingency to cover errors or whatever. So again, the number of units becomes important for that reason. The other thing I'm concerned about, is a lot of times they ask the developers to prepare or help the county by doing off-site improvements. In KIHEI, they have a problem with flooding. And of course, we happen to be on a stream or a gully, whatever you call it. And there's been hints that they may want us to repair the drain that goes under the street. And I am violently opposed to that type of situation. I would rather not do a project than pay for that type of benefit to the community. And my reason for that is quite simple. I'm selling at cost. I'm willing to give up all my profit. If the city or county needs the road repair or the drain repair, that should be a county expense. You should not ask 81 affordable buyers to pay an extra $50,000 a unit so the drain can get fixed. And that's one of the problems. I'm very concerned in my style of development, because it's too easy to say, well, the land is worth $400,000. Peter's putting in the deal at only 150. So there's all that extra money there. Let's snatch some of it for the county. All they're doing is raising the price. So there is still a chance, if we run into that situation, I'm going to need your guys' help to say, guys, it's not fair. You should not charge 81 affordable buyers to repair something the county should. That's not an affordable person's responsibility. And if we're serious about affordable housing, we shouldn't be doing that. Your county is really very good on affordable housing because they guarantee the water and all of those things, which most counties don't. So they have the intention, but they've hinted at, well, we have this flooding problem. We might like you to kind of help us there. And I will help. I will organize the community to protest and demand the county fix it, but I will not spend a dollar of my buyers' money to correct a problem that I don't think is our problem. So we still have a ways to go. And to me, protecting that view is important, because I'm planning to do an additional 1,000 to 2,000 units on Maui. And if the county thinks they can extract money on each property because I'm selling below market, I cannot tolerate that, okay? If I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna sell them for $1 million, and then they can take as much money as they want. But if I'm selling that same house for 400, 500, I am not gonna pay additional money for the privilege to lose money. It's that simple. So again, we're going to need your help. I mentioned additional projects. I'm looking at projects in KIHEI, Wailuku, and KIHEI. It totals over 2,000 units. We're very close to agreement on over 1,000 or 2 subdivisions with over 1,000 units. And if I'm able to put that together in the next few months, we'll announce those and we'll start that program. Again, part of it is looking at where Maui is and having to do something to help build it. I'm also looking at changing my model a little bit, even on Ho'onani, and again, to reduce the price. I might structure it to where we only sell you the lot. But with that will come a program where we've lined up the local contractors, we've lined up the homes that can be built, we have the pricing, but I won't be the developer for the house, because then I don't have to charge a profit on the house, and I can reduce the price another $30,000, $40,000, but I still will hire a supervisor who will see that the homes are built. You don't have to worry about it. We'll still be there. We'll hold your hands. We'll take you through the process. I have to charge a profit on the lots because that's what I'm selling. But if I can reduce the price on the house a little bit more, I might consider that program. And we're talking to some lenders now to see if they'd accept it. Everybody thinks I'm a little crazy. They think you should have the general contractor, but you have the general contractor, it adds 10%. That contractor then works on all his subs and really forces them to reduce the prices and stuff so he can make more money. I'm beginning to think I'd rather have 20 local contractors, each building 4 or 5 homes, and we'll supervise all the profit, everything will stay on Maui, and I think it benefits everybody. And Ho'onani's small enough, I may not do it on Ho'onani, but definitely on the larger projects, it's starting to look like that's the big advantage. The big savings is in the land cost, because again, I buy my land at a really good price. And on Ho'onani, I think I bought it, or some of the properties I'm looking at, I'm buying at $30,000 per lot. On top of that, I have to add the infrastructure that's, let's say, it's $100,000. But now I have a lot that's worth $400,000. But under my program, I sell it for $130,000, which is the cost. So again, when I talk about cost, I'm adamant it's cost and nothing more than that. I don't care what the price is. I've done projects, one project, and again, I use it all the time, although it's an old project, but it was so much fun, is when I did Po'omoho Camp. We had people that were paying rent of $30, $40 a month to rent their plantation house. And they were going to lose it because the lease was expiring. So I agreed to buy the camp and I agreed to sell the units. And the property, as an example, a fee simple house appraised for $295,000. We sold it for $95,000. That was our cost. Everyone in the camp purchased, except one individual who did not want to buy. Everyone bought. It took some people 5 years to qualify because they had bad credit and everything else. But again, we gave everybody as much time as they needed to do it. I recently did 2 projects in Waialua, farmland, and we sold the lots for $60,000 an acre. And I thought the price was high. We sold out in about 3 hours. And the farmers are telling me, Peter, your price is so low. I said, what do you mean? They said, other lots are $250,000, $275,000 an acre. And I was at $60,000. That was the cost. I did a second project and the lots came out at $145,000 an acre. And I thought, wow, I probably shouldn't do this one. It's too expensive. But the farmers had wanted to buy. Sold out in like half an hour. All the farmers bought. I'm doing a third project now, which is going to be another 300 to 400 acres. And our cost is coming in around $110,000 an acre. We expect to sell out easily in 4 or 5 hours. The key is people are buying because my prices are tied to what they can afford. It doesn't have a lot of profit or benefits to the developer. All the benefits flow to the buyer in form of price. And I do make some weird decisions, and lenders and people scratch their head and say, why is he doing that? If I made the decision, somehow it's reducing the price. It's reducing the cost. It's reducing the time, which saves money. Ho'onani is already behind schedule. We've had to pay interest or lost money in terms of the delay. The good news is it hasn't caused an increase because I paid cash to buy the lot. So we haven't had interest, we haven't had other costs, and I won't charge interest on the funds I put in because I'm entitled to a percentage of the profits. That's all I get. So again, we're going to be able to come in, I think, at a very good price. Now, one of the things we're running into, and this is more a philosophical debate I'm having with this concept of affordable housing. Everybody thinks we have a problem building affordable housing. It cannot be done. The reality is it can be done. We can build affordable housing, and we can solve our problem in 10 to 15 years, or 10 years really at the most. The reason is right now we do not understand the problem, and we are treating the symptoms. So again, as we start to do more projects, I'm hoping I can educate more people about what needs to be done and the solutions that need to be in place to actually beat this problem once and for all. And the first thing to do is understand what's causing our problem. It is not a shortage of homes. If we build more homes, we're going to make the problem worse. Our present structure, everything we're doing is wrong. We are raising the cost of housing. We are making it more and more difficult to buy. And that's the basic point that needs to be changed. If you understand a real estate economy or market, houses are built for people in the community. So you build based on incomes. Back in the 60s, we built houses based on income. The government was investigating why housing was so expensive. Houses cost $25,000 back then. And they were looking at why monthly payments were so high, $175 to $225, $250 a month. But realize husband and wife both working were earning $500, $600. So the relationship is still the same in terms of cost. But back in the 60s, local people could afford to buy. We made a sacrifice, but we could afford to buy. Today, we can't. It's impossible for the local buyer. So the question is, what has happened? And the answer goes back to the 60s. We knew what the problem was in the 60s. If you looked at our market, you noticed a disparity, and it was areas around military bases and Waikiki. You could see price increases on units in Waikiki where residential units were selling for more than a comparable unit in Makiki or other areas. You notice in the military areas, houses were selling for more money than what the locals were paying. So there was a disparity. The military had higher wages, they had housing allowances, they could always outbid the local buyer. Waikiki was an outside market. The tourists would come in, the visitors would come in, they could buy a unit. They weren't tied to our wages or our income. They would pay 5, 10% more with no problem. So the problem started in the 60s. In the 70s and 80s, we saw it change to a national market where we had Canadians, Japanese, foreign buyers come in and drive our prices up higher. Eventually they'd collapse, but then they'd shoot up again. So we went from a local to a national market. Today, we are in the worst possible place because we have become an international destination. We are now building homes for people who retire from Japan, Europe, America, the whole world. There's absolutely no relationship to our wages, our income. As the market has gone up to the international market, our affordable market has gone up. When the county tells you today a $700,000 or $600,000 is affordable, it's a lie. It's not affordable. We cannot afford that price because it's not tied to our wages. It's tied to what the Japanese will buy. It's tied to the fact that we're raising the price of land, we're raising the price of housing. And so when they offer us a unit at $750,000, we think, wow, it's cheap. No, it isn't. It's pretty much being sold at a high price for our market. So the solution is understand the problem is we need to tie prices to the local market. We need to create a local market. I want to give you two examples how the government does not understand real estate. And these are really good examples, and I think most people grasp it immediately. If you look at mass transit in Honolulu, it's going to be a $15 to $20 billion fiasco. And we are going to pay for that. Our grandkids are going to pay for that over the next 20, 30 years. The reality is mass transit could have been free. Shouldn't have cost the taxpayers 1 penny. In fact, we could have gotten enough money that we could have $20 billion in a reserve account to operate it. So even the operation wouldn't cost the taxpayers a penny. And how could that have been done? In building mass transit, we added, 15, 20 stations. Every station has a 1/2 mile radius around it, which is called a mass transit zone. All of those properties are going to have an increase in value, an increase in density, an increase in zoning, and all kinds of concessions. So a property that was selling for $100, because of mass transit, may be selling for $300 or $400. Ela Moana, where prices were $300, $400 a foot, now $1,000 a foot, right? Then the county comes out and says, guys, we're going to give you special zoning, no parking, more density, all of these concessions. They raise the price again. And they tell you they're doing all of this to create affordable housing. Well, you can't double and triple the price of land and tell me it's helping affordable housing. So mass transit was in trouble. And I happened to be having breakfast with the head back then. And I said, look, you realize this whole thing could be free. And he said, how? And I said, all you have to do is freeze the zoning and then charge for the additional density or charge for whatever it's you're going to give them, or charge an impact fee. So of course he sat down and started to calculate, and it comes back, Peter, if we charge $5 a square foot, we would raise the money to pay. I said, well, but if the land value is going to go up $200 or $300, why not charge 50? Why only 5? Well, that's all we need. I said, no, let's get another $5 to maintain the system. Let's add $5 to cover our sewer system and an upgrade to our roads and our schools. The reality is we created billions and billions of dollars in value. The whole time the politicians and the board are telling you we're going to create affordable housing and opportunities. And the reality is they're raising the price, they're raising the taxes. They don't understand real estate. They create the value and they give it away. My other example is the same thing we did on Oahu, we're doing here on Maui. I love this program. I think it's one of the greatest things the council's ever come up with, or your county government's ever come up with. But like Honolulu, they didn't apply it correctly. And that's your ADU requirements, where you can build a second unit on certain lots. And now you can build 2 ADUs on certain lots. And it's done to create affordable rentals and affordable units. The reality is, when you increase the density, you increase the price of the land. So it doesn't have the effect of helping. It makes land more expensive. It means the developer now gets a bigger profit as he develops new lots. If they had said or implemented it where, okay, we're going to give you the additional density, but you have to build a unit that will be rented to somebody under 100% of median income, that would not have an increase on the value or as great an increase, because you're now tying that unit to the income of the residents of Maui. You're requiring it be rented to a working person on Maui, not someone vacationing, not a tourist, but a local market. That would have worked. So again, they created more units. They're proud of the units they've created, but a lot of those units did not create value for the community. They created value for the owner of the property or the owner of the developer. If they had done the opposite, where they had that restriction, it would have worked. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is going forward, I'm going to want to put restrictions into my future projects, including Ho'onani. But on Ho'onani, because I already announced it, I'm only going to put the restrictions in if you as buyers agree. So I'm going to give you the right to say I'm crazy, don't do it. I'm hoping I convince you you should do it. And the first thing is to understand, when you buy real estate, you are not buying for appreciation. Everybody thinks we buy for appreciation. Appreciation is not the greatest creator of wealth in real estate. You should be willing to give up appreciation if you can get all of the other benefits of real estate or the ownership of real estate. So the reason you buy real estate, the greatest creator of wealth in real estate is locking in your monthly payment for housing for 30 years by having a first mortgage. Because as pay raises come, your cost of housing stays the same. If you were renting, every time you got a pay raise, rent went up, rent went up, rent went up. I can do projections going forward. You won't believe them. You'll think I'm crazy. So I'm going to go back in time. I'm going to go back to 1960, when I was out looking to buy my first house as an investor. That house would have cost me $25,000. That house, if I had bought it, would have cost me a total of $39,000. I think I did my math wrong. It's actually 29, but we'll say $39,000 in interest. That's all. I bought my house for $39,000 in interest expense over 30 years. After that, I'm assuming I have no mortgage and I just live there. The person who rented that house for the same 60-year period would have paid $3 million in rent. I want you to think about that. The house went from 25,000, maybe 700,000, 800,000 today. The person renting paid 3 million. The person who bought paid 39. Would you rather be the renter or the buyer? You'd rather be the buyer. If as a buyer, you had to settle for a price of 500,000 instead of 700, but you were able to save that $2.9 million and invest it in stocks and bonds or other real estate, would that be a good deal? So when developers talk about restrictions on resale or restrictions on pricing, you should not be concerned if the restriction is tied to wages of the community, because all they're doing is saying, we want to have a local market. We want the affordability to survive your ownership. We want this house to be affordable forever. We want your kids and your grandkids to be able to buy, okay? And that's what happens. Every property we sell in the affordable category should require that when you resell it, you have to resell it at a percent of median income. So if you buy at 100%, you should be willing to resell at 100%. If you buy at 80%, you should be willing to resell at 80%. you are making a sacrifice. You are giving up appreciation. But what you're giving up is small compared to what you can earn. I have promised the earlier groups, I'm going to come back to Maui, especially for this group of buyers. And I have a class I used to do on affordable housing and the value created in real estate. And there's basically 10, 12, 13 ways to create value in real estate. And you have to do nothing but own the real estate. But if you understand these ways, you can accelerate your growth, your profit, your potential. I am amazed that so few people understand how real estate works and how it creates value. So I know in the old days, for all of my projects, I used to give them this class so they understood what they had to do to accelerate the possibility to create more value so they could move to something better. I have never put restrictions in on my projects on Oahu. And the funny part is I haven't had to, because even today, with property values reaching $1 million, my units are still selling at 600, 700, 500, 400. And it's fascinating because they did a study on Oahu when they said every community has hit $1 million except KIHEI, Waipahu, Wahiawa, Old Eva, and the West Coast, right? All of that Nanakuli, Maile, Makaha area. Those are where most of my projects were. Local neighborhoods, only sold to locals. Tourists don't buy, foreigners don't buy, or very seldom. So those prices have managed to stay tied to the local economy, right? So again, local people have a shot. Now it's interesting because I was looking at a report on Maui the other day, if I can find it, and I was shocked at the information that it contained or that was being reported. And I'm sure you've probably heard of this, but for me, it's what convinced me to decide to do more projects on Maui. It started off in this report, and I think this was the Maui Housing Report by Government. Maui County had the state's largest housing unit vacancy rate. Basically, 21.5% of your units are vacant because they're used as second homes. 21% of all homes. Then it goes on to say, in 2020, about 70% of the homes purchased went to people who didn't plan to use them as a residence. Sold to investors, and again, probably mainland buyers. That jumped 50% from 2016. So you can see the demand of the foreign or off-island buyers are getting stronger and stronger. In the same report, they talk about how the local buyers or the mainland buyers are paying $1 million, and the local buyers are only willing to go up to about 400,000. So that's the difference. The market's at $1 million. The local wages are around 400,000, 500,000 price. You're never going to be able to make up that difference unless your county government or our state government initiates a program to create a local market tied to wages. Most of my projects, all of my projects, in fact, fall into the local affordable category. And I'm beginning to think on Maui, if I do not put in some type of mechanism to keep the price down, my houses could be flipped and go into that $1 million category real quickly. And that I would be offended by, because I want them to stay affordable. I'm not selling these homes and giving up my profits so people can flip them and make a quick buck. I'm giving it so local families have a place to live, a place to create wealth, a place to call home, and at some point they can sell it and move on, or they can sell it to their children. So I have a very different approach to real estate, and I have a very different approach to value. And I think that's something we have to think about. Now, the other thing is, what's the solution for affordable housing? And basically, if you're buying or selling, it's as I've already said, we have to tie the price to a local income. We have to tie it to the median income somehow. And that would require some changes, and we'll work that out. You do not buy for appreciation, you buy for long term. For tenants, we should not build rental buildings for tenants. It is absolutely wrong. Rental housing is a funnel through which the wealth flows to the landlord. What we need to do is to build rental housing that is owned by tenants. The tenants own the building, operate the building, and what they're doing is you're locking in a monthly payment. I'm going to tell you the story, and it's a true story, about a woman who was single, living in one of the most expensive cities in our country, New York. And she went to rent a unit. And I think her rent was something like $400 a month when she rented it. Her security deposit was $400 a month. And when she rented it, they said, okay, you now own apartment 804. And she said, what? She says, yes, you own your apartment. Your down payment was $400, which was your security deposit. And they explained how they were a tenant-owned building. So she moved in. What she had done is she had locked in the mortgage payment on her unit for the rest of her life. So her mortgage payment remained constant. Her maintenance fee went up, the taxes went up, everything went up. After 30 years, her payment went down because she paid off her share of the mortgage. So now she only paid the taxes. She finally retired. She went and said, I'd like to give back my unit. They said, fine, we'll buy it. They paid her $4,000 to buy the unit. That was her security deposit with 5% interest, right? Now you think, well, what's she gonna do? She had saved $2 to $3 million because her wages went up, her cost of housing remained the same. She retired, she went to a retirement community, was paying $7,000, $8,000 a month, lived another 20 years, passed away, still had $500,000, $600,000, which she gave to all her nieces and nephews. This story is about my aunt. She had a chance to lead a good life. And realize she traveled to Europe every year. She was a wonderful, wonderful aunt. She's the crazy aunt you all love. But she traveled to Europe every year with my grandfather. And they had great times. But she still saved the money. She worked in New York. She lived in New York. She was a very happy, happy person. She led a good life. There's no reason people in Hawaii cannot accomplish the same thing. When we became a state, Singapore became a country. Singapore took a different approach to housing. Their premier understood real estate and understood value. And he was a benevolent dictator, so it made it a little easier. But what happened in Singapore is what could have happened in Hawaii. Singapore was one of the poorest countries when it started. Its housing was a disaster. And under him, it became one of the most successful countries, one of the wealthiest countries, but one that is 95% owner occupied. They made a commitment to solve the problem. They're 95% owner occupied. I'm pretty sure the 5% that's not owner occupied are foreigners who live in Singapore, because I can't imagine the government not forcing someone to buy. But basically, they forced everybody to buy. They managed it. They made it affordable. They got everybody in. It gave them stability. It created wealth. They're the most highly educated. It's a wonderful city. If you go there, they're building and rebuilding it, modernizing it, all because the government made the right commitment to housing. And the same thing has to happen here. When I went to the legislature and talked about the Singapore example, they missed it completely. They run off and they want to do what Singapore did. They hire experts now. They want to do what Japan did. They want to do what Argentina did or California did. And if they duplicate what these other places did, they will fail. The Singapore example is the example Hawaii needs. It's not what they did, it's how they did it. The government took complete responsibility for the problem. They said, we will solve it. We will have housing for everyone. And they went and did it. That's what's missing in Hawaii. We have promises. Oh, we're going to do mini units. We're going to do this. We're going to use government lands. We're going to change the zoning. We're going to make it easier. None of that will work because they're not tying the units to local wages. He'll bring pricing down. He'll make it easier to build, but it won't stay down. It'll go right up. The more they build, the more people will come to Hawaii. We cannot compete with the Hawaii or the mainland owners. They live in communities where wages are higher, living costs are lower, they save money, they invest money. We worry about how do we pay for electricity? How are we going to pay for the food? How are we going to pay for rent? We got probably 60% of our community lives paycheck to paycheck. And our government does not see the need to solve this housing crisis. I tell you right now, it can be solved, and it can be solved very quickly. So what do we have to do? Well, the first thing is we need to do something immediately. The first thing we can do is insist the state government build 20, 30, 40,000 homes for Native Hawaiians. Think about it. Hawaiian homes is tied to local wages. Only locals can buy. Mainlands can't. They can't influence the market. If the Native Hawaiian community moves on to Hawaiian homes land, that means the units they're renting become available. The houses they own become available. Most of those homes are in communities local people will be comfortable living and local people can rent. We can take the pressure off of our market immediately to help over the next 3 or 4 years while our government puts the rest of the programs into place. The second thing we can do to immediately solve the crisis is the Section 8 program. A lot of people don't realize because they think of Section 8 as a rental subsidy program. It's not. It's actually a home ownership program. I got the law changed in 1985 to where you could use Section 8 to buy a home. And it all started when I testified at the legislature. And I gave them the solutions to solve our housing crisis. And one of the things I said was Section 8 is nothing more than a way to rip off our community. We use all of our tax dollars and all of our government money to use our poor as a funnel through which the wealth flows to the wealthy building owner. We need to change the model. If you're on Section 8, you're going to be on Section 8 for your life. Your children are going to be on Section 8. The government is subsidizing you. If Section 8 becomes an ownership program, you lock in a monthly payment. Over 30 years, your wages go up, but your housing expenses are set. So in 30 years, they're off of Section 8. During the 30 years, the Section 8 doesn't go up. Right now, Section 8 is costing us money every single month. We can't lose. And the best part is it's federal money. Doesn't even cost us money, okay? We have the Section 8 tenants. We need to put the Section 8 into ownership. You know why our politicians wouldn't do anything? Peter, how can we explain to the middle class we're letting the poor people buy houses? And I'm saying, well, what's that got to do with it? You do Section 8, we'll come up with programs for everyone. And there are programs for everyone, by the way. There's nobody that cannot buy, if you think about it. It's just our government has to be a little more creative. The key is Section 8 would have had a huge impact, but the government, in its wisdom, did not fund the financing. Instead, they said, we'll let private lenders make the loan. We will guarantee the income for 15 years. Now that sounds good, but if you understand American banks, they redline large communities based on credit, income, etc. They don't want a loan. People on Section 8 are going to have trouble borrowing money. All our government has to do is say, we'll guarantee the down payment. Section 8 people will be able to buy. We can take them off. That means more money over time becomes available for more Section 8. We immediately loosen up our market. We create opportunities for more people. We now have 2 or 3 years to initiate the programs for the middle, for everyone else, okay? And there are programs that will solve problems for everyone else. The key is, it is solvable. On my properties, I am going to ask my tenants to consider tying their property to what the incomes are of the community. So you're going to buy at 100% or 80%, and I'm going to ask you to be willing to sell at that number. I am not going to require it because I didn't tell you about that in the beginning. I'm kind of adding it, and it's not fair because some of you have been waiting. I am hoping you will listen to what I say and say, yes, that's fair. I'm willing to do it. If you don't want to do it, I won't do it, okay? But I'm hoping you will see the logic in what we're doing. I know local people, I think, are going to be willing to say, hey, I'll do it because I'm going to help my brother, I'm going to help my kids, I'm going to help my neighbor. You're helping the community. I will show you how to make more money than what appreciation would have given you. We have to get away from appreciation. We have to get away from flipping homes to make money. It's an absolute illusion or misrepresentation of how to make money in real estate, okay? People who bought from me years ago are now retiring. Single women teaching at Catholic schools, which means they got no money and no retirement, own 6 and 7 properties because they bought a property from me 30, 40 years ago. And when they bought from me, they had no money down because in the old days, I loaned them the down payment to help them. I charged no interest. You paid me what you could when you could. And it was interesting how many people went out and took second jobs and worked overtime so they could pay me back faster because they knew I was going to take the money and help someone else. And I tell you, that's what has driven me my whole development community. The fact that the people I've helped have helped other people. When I did Pomoho Camp, I was really sad because we had like 18 owners who could not afford to buy. Just no way they could afford to buy. And we went to the community and I said, what do you want to do? And they said, Peter, you're giving us $2 million to put in a new road and a new water system. Take that money, loan it to the 18 people so they can buy their units. Let's give them 3 years to get their credit cleaned up or sell another property, whatever they needed to do. Finally, 10 years later, they finally got the last person to buy. They're now doing the road and the new water tank and the new water line. But there was a community that made a huge sacrifice to help the poor or the disadvantaged in their group of 66. They helped those 18 families buy. The house we sold for $95,000 would sell for $400,000 or $500,000 today. That's 15 years ago, okay? I have no restriction on that property. The people, I have confidence they'll take care of it. On Maui, I tell you right now, this market is going too fast to the outside. We need to rein it in. We need, as locals, if you're going to live here and you want to thrive here, you have to adopt the type of programs I'm talking about, or you can make a quick buck and leave. But everyone else left behind is getting screwed or devastated. We cannot let this continue. So again, my plea to everyone is to have an open mind as we go forward. And I will be back in a few weeks or months to do the drawing. Prior to that, I will probably come back to talk specifically to the people that are going to be in the drawing about the restrictions. I will probably have the class about how wealth is created in real estate so you can understand, shoots, if I do all these other things, who cares about appreciation? I tell you right now, I tell clients all the time, give up the appreciation, take all of the other wealth creators. You make more money. You make more money, okay? Now I'm going to open for questions and answers. I realize I kind of went all over the place, but if you know me, that's my nature. I'm very passionate about what I do, and it's all about affordability. Absolute about affordability. Anyway, I'm open for question and answers. Those on you on Zoom, I'm sorry, because I don't think we can do the questions and answer. You can send in the question and we'll respond in writing. I'm a very much a low-tech guy in a high-tech world, and I just don't understand how Zoom works. And if I tried to do it, you would have been disconnected at the very beginning. But anyway, if you have questions, you can, if you have a friend here, call them. If not, just send the question and we'll respond in writing. Anyway, for the people that are here, do you have questions? I overwhelmed everybody. No questions. Yeah.
Is the Wailani project, is that the same project as Wailani project?
As which one?
Wailani.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, I should have explained that. The county calls it Ho'onani. So I got in the habit of calling it Ho'onani, but that's not the name of the project. The name of the project is what? Wailani. Okay, so it has two names. I used the wrong, I see, all of you are thinking you're here for the wrong project. My mistake. My mistake. Okay, any other questions? Your county has actually been more supportive than most. The delays we've had, I would have to take some responsibility for because I didn't understand your process per se, and I suspect I stepped on a few toes. My biggest problem when I go to a different island is they're used to developers making a profit. Every request the developer makes is about him making more money or him losing risk. I come in and say, oh, give me more units, I'm going to reduce the price. And they go, yeah, like, you know, come on, be real. They don't understand. Oahu, they understand. But I'll be honest, on Oahu, I avoid building from the ground up with a passion because I have alternatives. I can do the ag condo, and that's the other thing too, by the way. I may do an ag condo up here also. And if I do an ag condo, we also do it with a plantation camp. So you get a house and an ag lot, but you have to be a farmer, you have to make money. It's not for you to have 1 acre of land. And your house lot though is a 5,000 square foot lot. So again, it's not something that appeals to outsiders. So again, it tends to control the value, okay? The key is, you know, they talk about all these restrictions and the regulations. I'm very tolerant of the restrictions because I realize, one, we live on top of our drinking water. We got to make sure we don't mess it up, okay? Our reefs, our ocean, all of these things we have to be sensitive to. We have a problem with our project where there's a lot of flooding on KIHEI Road. Has nothing to do with our project, but it has to do with the county not expanding the drain or maintaining the drain to the ocean, right? So it's that kind of thing where I think if we all work together, we can get those problems solved. But the key is, if there's an unnecessary delay, that's not right, okay? The faster they approve, the better. But I'd rather they be slow rather than make a mistake in terms of the environment or some of these other issues. But a lot of the objections that are raised when projects come forward are not about the community, the environment. They use it as an excuse. Usually they just don't want a project in their backyard. I have people opposing my project because of the traffic. Well, if you oppose my affordable housing because of traffic, you sure the hell better be opposing every multi-million-dollar home being built out to Wailea. And you better demanding that they don't give Wailea the ability to build anything else because of traffic. But to pick on an 81-unit building and tell me it's about traffic, I'm sorry, I can't believe it. To tell me that building on my lot, 81 homes, is going to cause the canal to flood. I want you to imagine a canal where water is gushing down and we have 81 people with garden hoses squirting into the canal. That's the amount of water we might generate. We're designing this project so all of our water stays on the property, does not go into the canal. The key is these are valid concerns, but they're not legitimate arguments to stop the project. But that's what we run into as developers. Sometimes the developer is wrong. I'm sure I'm going to be wrong sometimes. As a rule, I'm right 50%, so I'm doing pretty good. But you still have to be realistic. I do not object to people complaining about my project. I want to hear the objections. If I can solve it, I'll solve it. But when you tell me I have to fix the road, or I have to build the bridge, or I have to build the school, I'm going to blow up. Ain't going to happen. Okay? Again, we have to make that commitment. Affordable housing, number one. And if we don't, Maui is lost. Honest to God, guys, you got 5 years to do something. And if you don't do it, move away. No sense in staying, because your county government has abandoned the local people. Now that I've said that, it's going to take another year to get our permit, because they're going to be mad at me. This is where I open my big mouth and I make trouble. No, but it's true. The politicians are not mad. They're not evil. They just don't understand. Who's telling them what to do? All the developers. They're paying political money. They're slipping them. I don't give political contributions. I refuse to. They ask me for money. I say, no, I'm an affordable housing developer. I'm not going to raise the price of my properties so I can give you some money. You support my projects because they help the people. On Oahu, working. On Maui so far, working. I think we're okay. But I tell you right now, if we get these types of complaints, they're not going to listen to me. I'm an outsider. I don't live here. My only claim to Maui is my wife's from Maui. She's got family here on Maui. But other than that, as far as I'm concerned, I'm a foreigner. I come from the big city. I'm a city slicker. You guys have to help. You have to speak up. I can only give you the information and teach you the little I know and hope it gives you a fine foundation to make the arguments. But we can turn the tide. We can do affordable. I've done about 6,000, 7,000 affordable units with no government help. None at all. I won't take it. I won't accept it. It's private. And I have proven that private industry can do it. Now imagine if the government had programs to make it easier for me. If they had financing available at lower rates, they had down payment loans, if they had all these other programs. Hey, I'll build 30, 40,000 homes in 4 or 5 years if they'll adopt my ideas. But you know something? I won't have to. Because if they adopt my ideas, there'll be 100 or 200 new local developers. Every architect, every engineer, every developer, every banker, every attorney will become a developer. Because on the model I'm promoting, there is no risk to the developer, but he makes almost no profit because he's taking no risk. So if you take the risk away, you take the profit away. The developers on Oahu thought I was crazy. And a couple of them I pulled aside and said, how many projects do you do a year? Oh, I usually do one every 2 or 3 years. I said, under my model, you could do 4 or 5 projects a year. Huh? Think about it. Government guarantees the loan, government guarantees the down payment, government gives you the money for the architectural engineering. Your job is the orchestra leader. Pull it all together and get it built at an affordable price. Right off the bat, we've knocked 10, 15, 20% off the cost of housing. The developer does not have to make a large profit on every building. He can make a small profit and do more. But what's going to happen now is the contractor's going to come along and say, hey, my crews aren't busy. I'm going to take a small building. I'm going to build a building or a small subdivision, keep my guys busy. We make a little profit. I know there's one developer on Oahu who does this. He always does a project, a small one, takes the money and flies his whole crew to Vegas for a weekend, right? They're local guys. I mean, they're willing to give and take. It's not all about money. The key is it works. We can do it. We just need to go out and do it. Any more questions? I talk too much.
If we don't qualify for this, or this seems like this is specific to this, and it sounds like there's other projects. Does it ever happen that this fails, you're allowed to try out?
Oh, if you're on our list to buy and you don't get into this project, you're on our list for the next one, right? So we don't eliminate you. And again, this is where I get myself into trouble, but let's say you can't buy because you don't have enough down payment, okay? I might be willing to go to the bank and say, hey guys, come on. I'm giving them a below market price. They have a huge equity. You should be able to do it. That's one of the problems with me putting in this appreciation restriction. It makes the banks a little more nervous, so they might be a little tougher, but I can try to work that out with them. In the old days, I would loan you the down payment or I'd loan you the money. I don't want to say I would do that because I am not making a lot of money on this project, but if there is a way for you to get that property, hook or crook will find it. And if we can't, we'll build another project where you can. That's why on this project, house and lot, so I'm making profit on house and lot. I have partners on this project because I wasn't, I was scared to do Maui by myself. So, I got to pay them off too. But, if I can do just the lots and it reduces the pricing up, I might do that. And then you have to have the house built, but we'll set up the program. Don't panic. We're not going to leave you. I know on the future projects, I'm seriously looking at land only because that's the cheapest way and will give the absolute lowest price. But it only works if the lenders agree, if the county's okay with it. Everybody has to work together. If the county says, no, we're not going to pre-approve the plans, each plan has to be approved separately. It's like, but we're building the same house 50 times. Nope, you want to come in for a building permit each time. Well, that delays. So then it may not work as well. The savings won't be as great. Your county, as a rule, has been very good on the affordable housing. That's one of the reasons. This is the first island I'm going to, really, other than Oahu. And Oahu was scary enough. I just assumed the neighbor islands would be worse. And in some respects they are, but not because they're worse. It's because I don't have a clue what your culture or what your requirements are. And so some of my ideas are really good on Oahu, but up here your building department looks at me like, what? I don't get it. And it's like, okay, let me explain from the beginning again. But they're getting it. They're getting used to me. Pretty soon I'll be, okay, I hope. Any other questions? Okay, if there's none other, I want to thank you for coming and watch out for our letters and our information. Ho'onani is coming. We hope to have our drawing in another 3 to 4 months. If you want to take the class, I'm planning to hold the class here. I like this location. So you'll see something will come out soon and we'll invite you. It's actually a 2 to 3 hour class, but I tell you right now, it is the equivalent of a college education in real estate. When I taught this class in Honolulu, we used to have hundreds of people come every single time I taught it. And so much information is a little overwhelming, but it's one of those things, if you think about it, all of a sudden you go, I got it. It makes sense. And once it makes sense, making money in real estate, duck soup. Seriously, everyone in this room can be worth $10 million in the next 15 years if you do what I recommend in my class. It's that simple. And I know people will say, no. Trust me, you can do it over your lifetime, particularly with no problem, just by buying your first home. That's the key, locking in that payment and saving that $3 million in rent. And by the way, the $3 million is a low number, and that's coming from 1960 to today. In 1960, the rents were 200. Today, you're going to start at 2,000 or something and go forward 60 years. It's not $3 million anymore. It's going to be like 10 or 15 million in rent. That's the kind of money that can be saved by buying. That's the money for your college education, your kids' education, your retirement, your business, quality of life. If you rent, you're giving up 10 to 15 million dollars by renting. Makes no sense. I thank you for coming. Please watch out for our emails and letters, and let's do it. Okay? Thank you.